8-year-old Sophie never imagined that giving her favorite purple and gold scarf to a shivering homeless woman would lead to police officers standing at her front door the very next morning. What started as a simple act of kindness on a freezing winter day at Riverside Grove's farmers market would unravel into a story that would haunt and heal an entire community. In the quaint town of Riverside Grove, where maple trees lined the streets like patient guardians and neighbors still brought freshly baked pies to welcome newcomers, lived a remarkable 8-year-old girl named Sophie Chun. The town itself seemed to breathe warmth, its streets always filled with the gentle murmur of friendly conversations and the occasional laughter of children playing in the park. Sophie wasn't remarkable in the way that most people might expect. She wasn't the fastest runner in her class, nor did she win every spelling bee. What made Sophie special was something far more precious: her heart. It was as if she had been born with an extra dose of kindness, the sort that made even the grumpiest crossing guard, Mr. Thompson, smile when she wished him good morning. This gift of compassion wasn't entirely surprising to those who knew the Chun family. Sophie's grandmother, Pearl Chun, was known throughout Riverside Grove as the keeper of wisdom and kindness. A tiny woman with silver hair, always neatly pinned back, Grandma Pearl had the kind of smile that could make anyone feel like they were being wrapped in a warm blanket on a cold day. It was on Sophie's 8th birthday that Grandma Pearl gave her granddaughter something special, a hand-knitted scarf that seemed to capture all the colors of a sunset. Purple and gold threads intertwined in intricate patterns, creating a masterpiece that had taken months to complete. But it wasn't just the beauty of the scarf that made it special. "Sophie, my dear," Grandma Pearl said, her eyes twinkling as she wrapped the soft wool around her granddaughter's small shoulders. "This isn't just any ordinary scarf. This scarf is magic." Sophie's eyes widened, her small hands running over the delicate stitches. "Magic? Really, Grandma?" Pearl nodded solemnly, though her eyes continued to sparkle. "Yes, my dear. But not the kind of magic you see in movies. This scarf has the power to warm not just your body, but your heart too. And when your heart is warm, you can share that warmth with others who need it most." Sophie's mother, Linda, watched from the doorway, a gentle smile playing on her lips. She remembered when her mother had given her a similar talk about kindness when she was young. The Chun women had always believed in the magic of compassion, passing down this wisdom through generations like a precious family recipe. From that day forward, Sophie wore the scarf everywhere she went. Even on warm days, she would keep it tucked in her backpack, just in case someone needed its magic. Her father, Michael Chun, would often chuckle at her devotion to the accessory, but he never discouraged it. He understood that sometimes belief in a little magic could make the world a better place. At school, Sophie's friends would admire the scarf's beautiful colors. Emma Thompson, her best friend, once asked why Sophie never seemed to get tired of wearing the same scarf. Sophie's response was simple: "Because it's filled with Grandma's love, and that makes it special every single day." The teachers at Riverside Grove Elementary noticed how Sophie would sometimes remove her scarf to lend it to a classmate who was cold during recess, or how she would use it to dry the tears of a kindergartner who had fallen on the playground. Ms. Martinez, her 3rd-grade teacher, often remarked that Sophie had an old soul in a young body. What no one knew then was that Sophie's magical scarf was about to become part of a story that would change not just one life, but an entire community. As the maple leaves began to turn golden that autumn, setting the stage for what was to come, Sophie continued to wear her scarf, unaware that she was about to discover just how powerful its magic could be. The air was growing colder in Riverside Grove, and the warm community spirit that the town was known for would soon be tested in ways no one could have predicted. But for now, Sophie simply walked to school each morning, her purple and gold scarf trailing behind her like a banner of hope, ready for whatever adventure awaited. Saturday mornings in Riverside Grove always brought the town to life with its famous farmers market. The town square transformed into a vibrant tapestry of colors, sounds, and smells. Fresh bread from the Baker family's stand, bright flowers from Mrs. Rodriguez's garden, and the sweet aroma of apple cider that Mr. Johnson had perfected over 30 years. On this particular morning, the air was especially crisp carrying the first real bite of winter. Sophie and her mother, Linda Chun, made their way through the market, their shopping basket already heavy with fresh vegetables and homemade jam. Sophie wore her magical scarf as always, its purple and gold threads catching the early morning sunlight. "Can we get some of Mr. Peterson's honey, Mom?" Sophie asked, bouncing on her toes as they passed the familiar wooden stall. "Grandma Pearl says it's the best for sore throats." Linda smiled, about to answer, when Sophie suddenly stopped. Her daughter's expression had shifted from excitement to concern, her eyes fixed on something across the square. Following Sophie's gaze, Linda saw what had caught her attention: an elderly woman sitting alone on a wooden bench, her thin jacket pulled tight around her shoulders as she shivered in the morning cold. The woman's name was Mary Williams, though Sophie didn't know this yet. What she did know was that the woman's fingers were blue with cold, and her shoulders trembled with each gust of wind that swept through the square. Several market-goers walked past, some casting concerned glances, others averting their eyes altogether. "Mom," Sophie whispered, her small hand tugging at her mother's sleeve. "She looks so cold." Linda hesitated, her maternal instincts warring with her compassion. She had always taught Sophie to be careful with strangers, but there was something about the woman's dignity, even in her obvious distress, that touched her heart. Before Linda could respond, Sophie was already unwrapping her beloved scarf from around her neck. "Sophie, wait," Linda began, but her daughter was already moving toward the bench with the determination that only an 8-year-old on a mission could possess. Mary Williams looked up as Sophie approached, her weathered face showing surprise at the sight of this small girl with kind eyes and determined steps. Some people might have seen danger in a homeless woman, but Sophie saw only someone in need of warmth. "Here," Sophie said softly, holding out her scarf. "You look cold. This scarf is magic. It will keep you warm." Her voice carried the absolute conviction of a child who believed in both magic and the goodness of people. Mary's eyes, clouded with exhaustion and hunger, suddenly filled with tears. She started to shake her head, to refuse this unexpected kindness, but Sophie was already gently wrapping the scarf around the woman's shoulders, just as Grandma Pearl had done for her on her birthday. But this is yours, dear," Mary managed to say, her voice rough from disuse but touched with a gentleness that matched Sophie's own. "Won't you be cold?" Sophie shook her head, smiling. "I have lots of warm things at home. The scarf chose you today. That's how the magic works. It knows who needs it most." Linda watched from a few steps away, her heart swelling with pride and emotion. She saw Mary's hands, trembling now not from cold but from emotion, reach up to touch the soft wool of the scarf. The woman's tears fell freely now, each one carrying years of loneliness and hardship. "Thank you," Mary whispered, looking into Sophie's eyes with an intensity that spoke of both gratitude and wonder. "Thank you, little angel," as Sophie rejoined her mother, leaving Mary wrapped in the warmth of the magical scarf. Neither of them could have known how this simple act of kindness would ripple through their community. Mary sat straighter on her bench now, the purple and gold scarf bringing not just warmth to her shoulders, but a spark of hope to her heart that had been cold for far too long. The market continued its busy morning around them, but something had shifted in the air of Riverside Grove. A small act of kindness had just planted a seed that would grow into something far more magical than even Grandma Pearl could have imagined. The drive home from the farmer's market was unusually quiet. Linda Chen's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as she struggled with the emotions of what she had just witnessed. In the rearview mirror, she could see Sophie sitting contentedly in the back seat, seemingly at peace without her beloved scarf. As they pulled into their driveway, Linda turned to face her daughter. "Sophie, sweetheart," she began, her voice gentle but firm. "What you did today was incredibly kind, but we need to talk about being careful with strangers. The world can be dangerous, even when our hearts want to help." Sophie looked at her mother with those wise eyes that sometimes seemed to hold all the wisdom of Grandma Pearl. "But Mom, if we let fear stop kindness, how will the magic ever work?" Her simple words carried such conviction that Linda felt her own fears begin to soften. That evening, Sophie sat at her desk, drawing pictures of purple and gold scarves flying like superhero capes. Her father, Michael, noticed her humming happily as she colored. "You seem pretty cheerful for someone who just gave away their favorite possession," he observed. Sophie didn't look up from her drawing, but her smile grew wider. "Dad, I didn't give it away. I shared its magic. And now it's even stronger because it's helping someone who really needs it." The certainty in her voice made Michael exchange a proud glance with Linda. The next morning, the family was just finishing their Sunday breakfast when the doorbell rang. Two police officers stood on their porch. Officer Mitchell, a tall woman with compassionate eyes, and Officer Kim, her younger partner with gentle features. "Mr. and Mrs. Chun?" Officer Mitchell's voice was soft. "May we come in? We need to talk about the woman your daughter met yesterday at the farmer's market." Sophie's parents exchanged worried glances as they invited the officers inside. Sophie sat between them on the couch, suddenly feeling very small. "I'm afraid we have some difficult news," Officer Mitchell began, kneeling down to Sophie's eye level. "Mary Williams, the lady you gave your scarf to, was found early this morning. She passed away peacefully in her sleep on a bench in the park." The room fell silent. Sophie's mother gasped softly, pulling her daughter closer. But before anyone could speak, Officer Kim pulled out an envelope. "We found this in her possession," he said gently. It was addressed to the little angel with the magic scarf. With trembling fingers, Sophie opened the envelope. The note was written on the back of a grocery receipt in elegant, careful handwriting. "Dearest angel, for 30 years, I taught children at Riverside Grove Elementary before life took unexpected turns. Yesterday, you taught me the final and most important lesson, that kindness still exists in this world, and that magic can be found in the most unexpected places. Your scarf didn't just warm my body, it warmed my soul. For the first time in years, I felt human again. I felt loved. Last night, I called my sister Catherine, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. We reconciled, and she was coming to take me home today. Though I may not be there when she arrives, I want you to know that you gave me the greatest gift. You helped me find peace and love in my final hours. Your scarf truly was magical. It gave me the courage to make that call, to feel worthy of love again. Keep sharing your light with the world, sweet child. You've changed my life with a simple act of kindness, and in my final moments, I am wrapped in both your warmth and your love. With eternal gratitude, Mary Williams, Mrs. Williams, former third-grade teacher, **. As Officer Mitchell finished reading the note aloud, the room was filled with both tears and a profound sense of peace. Sophie's mother held her close, her own tears falling freely. Her father stood by the window, wiping his eyes quietly. The department found her sister. Officer Kim added softly, "Catherine is on her way. She wanted us to tell you that knowing her sister felt loved in her final moments means everything to her." Sophie sat quietly, holding the note carefully in her small hands. "So the magic worked differently than I thought," she whispered. "It helped her find her way home, just not the way we expected." Officer Mitchell placed a gentle hand on Sophie's shoulder. "Sometimes, sweetheart, the greatest kindness we can give someone is making their last moments peaceful and full of love. You did that for Mary. And now, we'd like your help with something special we're planning in her memory." The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room. Though tears fell, there was also a sense of something profound. The understanding that sometimes the most powerful magic isn't in preventing loss, but in filling final moments with dignity, love, and peace. The Riverside Grove Gazette rarely made headlines that brought the whole town to tears, but Tuesday's front page did exactly that. Under the headline, "A Child's Magic Scarf, the Last Gift of Kindness," reporter Sarah Martinez had crafted a beautiful tribute to both Sophie's compassion and Mary Williams' life. The article began with the purple and gold scarf but went deeper, revealing Mary Williams' story. How she had shaped young minds for 3 decades at Riverside Grove Elementary. How life's cruel turns had left her homeless after a series of medical bills and family tragedies. And how a child's simple act of kindness had given her the courage to reconcile with her sister in her final hours. By Wednesday morning, The Chun family's front porch was overflowing with flowers, cards, and hand-knitted scarves. Each one came with a note, sharing stories of how Mary Williams had touched their lives as a teacher, or how Sophie's kindness had reminded them of what their community could be. Mrs. Williams taught me to love reading in 3rd grade. One note read. She always said books were magic carpets that could take us anywhere. Now I understand she was teaching us about the magic of kindness, too. At Riverside Grove Elementary, Sophie's classmates looked at her differently now. Not with the awkward distance that sometimes comes with sudden attention, but with a new kind of respect. Emma Thompson, her best friend, organized a scarf knitting club during lunch breaks, teaching others what her grandmother had taught her. "We can make magic too," Emma declared, her knitting needles clicking away. Sophie showed us how. The story reached Michael Chin deeply. As a successful business consultant, he had always believed in practical solutions, but his daughter's act of kindness had awakened something else in him. During the next town council meeting, he stood up with a proposal. "My daughter gave a scarf to a former teacher who had fallen on hard times," he began, his voice steady but emotional. "But what troubles me most is that Mary Williams lived among us for years, and we didn't see her. We didn't help. I propose we create the Riverside Grove Warmth Initiative, a program to help our homeless neighbors reconnect with their families and rebuild their lives." The council chamber fell silent. Then Mayor Anderson, a woman known for her practical approach to city management, stood up. Her eyes were misty as she spoke. "Mr. Chin, your proposal is exactly what this town needs. But I'd like to add something." She turned to address the whole room. "Mary Williams spent 30 years teaching our children. Her final lesson, taught through the kindness of a child, should be remembered. I propose we place a memorial bench in the Farmers Market Square where Sophie's act of kindness took place." The vote was unanimous. But what happened next surprised everyone. Local businesses began calling the mayor's office, offering support. Mr. Peterson, the honey vendor from the farmer's market, pledged a percentage of his sales to the Warmth Initiative. The local craft store donated knitting supplies for Emma's club. The Riverside Grove Bank offered to match all community donations. Catherine Williams, Mary's sister, attended the next council meeting. She stood before the town, her voice trembling but determined. "My sister was more than her final years," she said. "She was a teacher, a mentor, and thanks to a little girl with a magical scarf, she died knowing she was still loved. This bench won't just be a memorial. It will be a reminder that kindness can change lives, and that it's never too late to help someone find their way home." The bench design was unveiled that evening. A simple but elegant structure in purple and gold, with a small plaque that would read, "In memory of Mary Williams' beloved teacher and friend, magic lives in acts of kindness dedicated by the children of Riverside Grove." As Sophie listened to these plans unfold, sitting between her parents in the council chamber, she fingered the soft purple yarn in her lap. Grandma Pearl was teaching her to knit now, passing down not just a skill, but a legacy of kindness that would warm hearts for generations to come. The magic of the scarf, it seemed, was still working its way through Riverside Grove, transforming not just individual lives, but the very heart of the community itself. In the weeks following the memorial bench dedication, the Chun family's dining room transformed into what Sophie called the memory workshop. Spread across the table were photographs, old newspaper clippings, and handwritten letters, pieces of Mary Williams' life collected by her sister Catherine and former students. "She kept everything," Catherine said one evening, carefully unfolding a yellowed paper. "Look at this, artwork from her students dating back to 1985. She held up a crayon drawing of a smiling teacher surrounded by stick-figure children. The signature at the bottom read Tommy Anderson, now Mayor Anderson's husband. Sophie sat beside Catherine, recording stories in a special notebook with purple and gold binding, the same colors as the magical scarf. The book project had started as a simple memorial idea, but grew into something larger as more people came forward with their memories. "We could include a chapter about the magic of teaching," Sophie suggested, her eyes bright with inspiration, "and how teachers like Mrs. Williams help plant seeds of kindness that grow forever." Meanwhile, the Riverside Grove Warmth Initiative was blooming across town. What started as Michael Chin's proposal had evolved into a comprehensive program. The old library annex was converted into a day center where homeless individuals could receive meals, access computers to contact family, and connect with social services. But it was in Sophie's third-grade classroom where some of the most remarkable changes were taking place. Emma, Lucas, and Noah, inspired by Sophie's story, had started what they called the Kindness Crew. Every Friday, they would gather after school to assemble care packages. "We need to make them special," Emma insisted, carefully arranging items in each package. Like Sophie's scarf was special. Lucas, who was known for his artistic talents, designed cards to go with each package. "My mom says sometimes people just need to know they're not invisible," he explained as he colored another card. Noah, the class mathematician, kept meticulous track of their supplies and needs. "If each student brings one item per week," he calculated, "we can make 15 care packages every month." The care packages were more than just collections of necessities. Each one contained a hand-knitted scarf, courtesy of Emma's growing knitting club, a personal note, and what the children called a spark of hope, something small but special, like a handmade bookmark or a small sketch. The story of Mary Williams and Sophie's magical scarf had reached beyond Riverside Grove. Local news stations picked up the story, and soon other schools began reaching out, wanting to start their own kindness crews. Then came an unexpected announcement from the school board. Principal Roberts called a special assembly to share the news. In honor of Mary Williams' 30 years of dedication to education, she announced, and inspired by a young student's act of kindness that reminded us all of the magic of compassion, we are establishing the Mary Williams Memorial Scholarship. The scholarship would be awarded annually to a student who demonstrated exceptional kindness and commitment to community service. But what made it truly special was its focus. It would help future teachers who pledged to work with underprivileged communities. Mrs. Williams believed that every child carried magic inside them. Catherine told the assembly, her voice thick with emotion. "This scholarship will help ensure that future teachers continue to nurture that magic." Sophie sat in the audience, surrounded by her fellow kindness crew members, listening as Principal Roberts explained how the scholarship would work. She thought about how one small act of kindness, inspired by her grandmother's magical scarf, had grown into something so much bigger than herself. That evening, as she added another chapter to the memory book, Sophie wrote, "Maybe the real magic wasn't in the scarf at all. Maybe the magic is in all of us, waiting for a moment of kindness to wake it up." Mrs. Williams knew this when she was teaching. Now, through this scholarship, she'll keep teaching this lesson forever. The ripples of kindness continued to spread, touching lives in ways that even Sophie couldn't have imagined when she first approached a shivering woman on a bench that cold morning at the farmer's market. And somewhere, she felt certain Mrs. Williams was smiling. 1 year after Mary Williams' memorial bench was installed, Sophie stood in the same spot at the farmer's market where she had first given away her magical scarf. This time, she noticed a woman in a worn business suit sitting on the bench, clutching a briefcase like it contained her entire world. "Her name is Rachel, Mr. Peterson, the honey vendor," whispered to Sophie. "She used to be a financial advisor until her company downsized. Been coming here every Saturday for the past few weeks." Sophie didn't hesitate. She approached Rachel with one of the Kindness Crew's care packages and a purple and gold scarf she had knitted herself under Grandma Pearl's patient guidance. "Sometimes we all need a little magic," Sophie said softly, echoing the words she had spoken a year ago. Rachel's eyes filled with tears as Sophie shared the story of Mary Williams and explained about the Riverside Grove Warmth Initiative. By the end of that day, Rachel wasn't just receiving help. She was meeting with Michael Chun about using her financial expertise to help others at the day center manage their resources and rebuild their lives. The Riverside Grove Initiative had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started in one small town had spread to neighboring communities, then across the state. The day center had become a model for other cities, with its combination of immediate assistance and long-term support. Then came the invitation that would change everything. Senator Sarah Palmer, who had read about the initiative, invited Sophie and her father to speak at a congressional hearing on community-based solutions to homelessness. Sophie stood before Congress, her voice clear and strong despite her nervousness. She wore a new purple and gold scarf, one that matched the hundreds being worn by supporters in the gallery. "Magic isn't just in fairy tales," she began. "Sometimes it's in a scarf, or a smile, or simply in seeing someone who feels invisible." Mrs. Williams taught for 30 years, helping children find their own magic. When she needed help, I shared some magic with her. But the real magic happened after, when our whole community remembered how to see each other again. Senator Palmer leaned forward, visibly moved. "Miss Chun, you've shown us that sometimes the most effective solutions start with the simplest acts of kindness. Would you tell us what you think communities across America need most?" Sophie thought carefully before answering. "We need to remember that everyone has a story, like Mrs. Williams did, and everyone deserves a chance to rewrite their ending." In the audience that day sat James Harrison, CEO of Harrison Enterprises. He had come out of curiosity, having read about the magic scarf movement in the Wall Street Journal. He left with a vision. 2 weeks later, Harrison stood in Riverside Grove's town square, announcing the creation of the Harrison Foundation for Community Renewal. The foundation would provide matching funds to any community implementing programs based on the Riverside Grove model. "Sometimes it takes a child to remind us of our humanity," Harrison announced, wearing his own purple and gold scarf. "Sophie Chun and Mary Williams have shown us that kindness isn't just good for the soul, it's good business. When we lift up our most vulnerable neighbors, we lift up entire communities." The Foundation's first project was the expansion of the Day Center into a full-service community resource center. Rachel, now fully back on her feet, was hired as its financial literacy coordinator. The center's entrance featured a mural of a purple and gold scarf floating on the wind, with Mary Williams' words beneath it. "Magic lives in acts of kindness." Sophie visited the center often, sharing her story with newcomers. But more importantly, she listened to their stories, just as she had listened to Mary's story through her final note. Each story was carefully added to a growing collection in the center's library, reminding everyone that behind every person seeking help was a lifetime of experiences, dreams, and potential magic waiting to be rekindled. One evening, as Sophie helped Rachel prepare for the next day's financial literacy class, she noticed a familiar face in an old photograph on Rachel's desk. "That's Mrs. Williams," Rachel said softly. "She was my third-grade teacher, too. She once told me that kindness was like an investment that always pays dividends." I didn't understand what she meant until now. Sophie smiled, touching the purple and gold scarf she wore. The magic, it seemed, had come full circle, weaving together past and present, teacher and student, loss and hope, into a tapestry of kindness that would continue to grow, one story at a time. On a crisp autumn morning, 5 years after Sophie first gave away her magical scarf, Riverside Grove gathered for a special ceremony. The town square was a sea of purple and gold, scarves wrapped around shoulders, ribbons tied to trees, and banners floating in the gentle breeze. Sophie, now 13, stood beside the memorial bench where it all began. Her hand rested on the weathered plaque as she addressed the crowd, her voice carrying the same gentle confidence that had touched so many hearts that day at the farmer's market. "5 years ago, my grandmother told me a scarf could be magic," she began. "She said it could warm not just bodies, but hearts too. What I didn't know then was that kindness has its own kind of magic, the kind that grows stronger the more you share it." The evidence of that magic was all around them. The Riverside Grove Warmth Initiative had spread to over 50 cities across the country. The Harrison Foundation had helped establish community centers in every state. But perhaps most meaningful were the smaller changes, the ways people in Riverside Grove had learned to see each other, really see each other, as Mary Williams had always seen her students. Catherine Williams stepped forward, her silver hair catching the morning light. In her hands, she held a familiar-looking purple and gold scarf, the original one Sophie had given to Mary. It had been carefully preserved, each thread carrying the memory of that first act of kindness. "My sister spent her life teaching children about the magic of learning," Catherine said, her voice strong despite her tears. But in her final hours, a child taught her about the magic of being seen, of being valued. Mary didn't die alone or forgotten. She died wrapped in kindness, knowing she mattered. Catherine unfolded the scarf, revealing its still vibrant colors. This scarf will be displayed in the community center's heritage room, alongside the stories of hundreds of lives changed by what began here. But more importantly, its magic lives on in every act of kindness inspired by my sister's story. The heritage room had become a living testament to the power of compassion. Its walls were lined with photographs. Mary Williams in her teaching days, Sophie giving away her scarf, the first day center opening, Rachel teaching her financial literacy class, and countless others who had found their way home through the initiative. Sophie's book about Mary Williams had become part of the school curriculum, teaching children that everyone's story matters and that kindness can rewrite endings. The Mary Williams Memorial Scholarship had already helped 15 future teachers begin their journeys, each one promising to carry forward the legacy of seeing the magic in every child. The true magic, Sophie continued, looking out at the faces before her, wasn't in the scarf at all. It was in Mrs. Williams, who never stopped teaching us even after she left her classroom. It was in my grandmother, who taught me that kindness is the strongest magic we have. It's in every person who chooses to see someone else's need and reach out with compassion. As she spoke, children from the Current Kindness crew distributed small purple and gold ribbons to the crowd. Each ribbon carried a tag with a simple message: share the magic. I promise, Sophie said, her voice clear and determined, to never stop believing in this magic. To never stop seeing people the way Mrs. Williams saw her students, as carriers of infinite potential and worth. Because sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you to help you believe in yourself again. Catherine joined Sophie at the podium, wrapping a new purple and gold scarf around the young girl's shoulders. This one had been knitted by the combined efforts of the original Kindness crew, each stitch carrying their gratitude for the way Sophie had taught them to see the magic in helping others. Mary would be so proud, Catherine whispered, hugging Sophie close. Not just of what you did that day, but of how you've helped us all remember what it means to be a community. As the ceremony concluded, people lingered in the square, sharing stories and memories. The farmers' market vendors set up their stalls, just as they had that fateful morning 5 years ago. But now, the purple and gold bench stood as a permanent reminder that magic lives wherever kindness dwells. And if you visit Riverside Grove today, you'll find that magic's still at work, in the scarves that appear mysteriously around the shoulders of those in need, in the way neighbors greet each other by name at the market, in the stories shared at the community center, and most of all, in the way people have learned to look for magic in the simplest acts of kindness. For in Riverside Grove, they know now what Mary Williams always knew, that true magic isn't found in the things we give, but in the love we share when we give them. And that magic, like the ripples from Sophie's first act of kindness, will continue to spread, warming hearts and changing lives for generations to come.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can keep bringing you the best stories.